Hey guys, and welcome to the Australian folklore iceberg. Yay! I finished this a little bit ago and now I'm recording it finally. This one should be shorter, but let's just get into it, you guys, okay? Let's just get into it. Tier 1. Bodies in the bridge. Australian folklore features urban legends about workers being accidentally entombed in wet concrete during the construction of the 19th century infrastructure. The most prominent example is the Dickabrim Bridge in Queensland, where a worker and his wheelbarrow are famously rumored to be inside a pylon. Dickabrim Bridge was built in 1886, and local lore suggests a worker fell into a steel cylinder, was covered in concrete, and never found. While 2 deaths were recorded during construction, the specific entombed worker story is considered likely mythical. Some locals believe the bridge is haunted by the worker claiming to hear tapping or cries from the pylons at night. Similar tales exist, such as the Bloody Bride on Norfolk Island, where convicts allegedly walled an overseer into a stone structure. Note, while 16 workers died during the construction of the Sydney Harbour Bridge, these are documented, not folklore. Moving on to Yowie. The Yowie is a mysterious creature from Australian folklore, often described as Australia's version of Bigfoot. The legend comes primarily from the oral traditions of various Aboriginal Australian groups, especially in eastern regions such as Queensland and New South Wales. Different communities have their own names and interpretation, but many describe a large, hairy, human-like being that lives deep in the bush. Some Aboriginal stories portray the creature as a spiritual or supernatural being connected to the land, while later colonial accounts shaped it into a cryptid-like creature similar to Bigfoot. Descriptions of the Yowie vary, but common features include being very tall, often 6 to 10 feet or 2 to 3 meters, covered in dark or reddish-brown hair, an ape-like face with a prominent brow ridge, long arms and powerful build, and a strong and pleasant odor. Yowies are said to inhabit dense forests, mountain ranges, and remote bushland, including areas like the Blue Mountains. Reported behaviors include loud, eerie screams or howls, throwing rocks, leaving large footprints, and avoiding direct contact with humans. Modern sightings continue to be reported particularly by hikers and campers. For some Aboriginal communities, Yowie-like beings are part of dreaming stories and may represent spiritual guardians or cautionary figures tied to respect for nature. However, interpretations vary widely among different groups. Today, the Yowie is a popular figure in Australian pop culture, cryptozoology symbolizing mystery in the vast Australian wilderness. Drop bears. Drop bears are a popular Australian hoax featuring large, vicious, carnivorous koalas that drop from trees to attack tourists. Used to scare visitors, they're described as having coarse orange fur, sharp claws, and a 20th century origin. Common remedies include spreading Vegemite behind the ears. They're described as dog-sized, vicious, and having coarse orange fur with darker mottled patterns. They are ambush predators that live in treetops and drop onto unsuspecting prey, typically tourists, from above. The legend is designed to frighten visitors, making it a national pastime and a classic example of Australian humor. The myth became popular in the 20th century, likely originating from stories told by locals to scare travelers. To protect against drop bears, locals suggest placing forks in your hair, spreading Vegemite or toothpaste behind the ears or armpits, or using an Australian accent. While completely fictional, the drop bear legend notes the Australian Museum similarities with the extinct hypercarnivorous marsupial Thycalio, the marsupial lion. Ghost Train Fire Demon. The Sydney Park Luna Ghost Train Fire is a tragic Australian event that has evolved into a dark urban legend, frequently associated with sinister supernatural undertones or demonic malicious arson. The fire killed 7 people, and suspicions of a cover-up along with reports of a fire demon or paranormal activity persist. On June 9, 1979, a fire destroyed the ghost train ride at Luna Park in Sydney, Australia. 7 people lost their lives, 6 children and 1 adult. The cause was never definitively established, although it was initially blamed on an electrical fault, a conclusion that was later contested. Subsequent investigations and witness accounts pointed towards potential arson, with claims of a strong smell of kerosene and a cover-up involving organized crime. Leading into the folklore part of that, due to the mysterious, rapid, and destructive nature of the fire, some accounts have blended the tragedy with paranormal rumors. The sometimes inexplicable, rapid nature of the fire, as well as the dark, surreal, and in some cases eerie atmosphere of the old wooden ghost train, has at times fueled speculation about supernatural or even demonic influences. The Luna Park fire has become a staple of modern Australian urban legend, often described as a haunted, cursed location with the tragic, unsolved, suspicious nature of the event giving rise to stories that haunt the city. The story is frequently retold as a dark piece of Australian folklore, emphasizing the terrifying and inexplicable nature of the event. Australian big cats. Extant non-native big cats, likely descendants of escaped circus animals or pets such as black leopards or mountain lions, are believed to inhabit remote Australian bushland, particularly in New South Wales, Victoria, and Queensland. Known as phantom cats, these elusive large-bodied predators are frequently reported, though sightings are often met with skepticisms, and many reported cases are likely large feral or mutant-sized house cats. The Blue Mountains/Penrith Panthers. Numerous sightings over decades, with the NSW government previously stating it's more likely than not that big cats exist in the region. Grampian's puma, reported in Victoria, a 1970s investigation deemed the existence of big cats beyond reasonable doubt. Sunshine Coast/Gympie big cat. Queensland reports potentially linked to escaped unregistered exotic animals in the early 20th century. Gippsland phantom cat, a reported 69 inches, 176 centimeters, feline specimen found, though later identified as a large feral cat. Some common theories are circus escapees. Many theories point to animals escaping from traveling circuses in the 19th and 20th century, including pumas and jaguars. Military mascots. Some suggest U.S. or Australian military personal released pets during World War II. Exotic pet trade. Importation of and subsequent release of exotic pets in the early 1900s. While large feral cats exist, the existence of a breeding population remains technically unproven, though they are a significant part of Australian cryptozoology and local folklore. Pine Gap, a joint Australian-U.S. satellite tracking facility in the Northern Territory. It's central to Australian folklore as a secretive spy base and Area 51 of the outback, surrounded by myths of UFOs, nuclear targets, and CIA conspiracies. It's renowned for its large white red domes, intense security, and historical protests. The Outback Area 51, it was initially described as a space research facility, but was actually a high-tech intelligence hub. It became the subject of rumors regarding UFO research and alien technology. The nuclear target myth. During the Cold War, it was frequently rumored that the base made Australia a primary target for Soviet nuclear strikes. The base is often associated with whispers of CIA control over Australian politics, including the conspiracy that it played a role in the dismissal of Prime Minister Doug Whitlam. The White Domes. The ray domes, which resemble massive golf balls, are iconic in Australian conspiracy folklore, symbolizing hidden superior technology. 1983 Women's Peace Protest. A major event in the folklore involved over 100 women breaking into the facility in 1983, leading to sensational stories of police brutality and resistance. Tier 2. The St. James Tunnels. The St. James Tunnels in Sydney are a series of abandoned 1920s railway tunnels beneath the CBD, famous for urban legends, World War II history, and a flooded section known as St. James Lake. Folklore includes tales of a massive albino eel, haunted, occult rituals, secret military training in total darkness, and the Cave Clan urban explorers. Some key features include the St. James Lake, a kilometer-long, water-filled section of the tunnel up to 6 meters deep, fed by water seepage from Hyde Park. The albino eel. Rumors persist of a large pale eel living in the subterranean lake. Ghostly tales. Stories of haunting, dark atmospheres, and tales of World War II soldiers' ghosts. Occult activities. Rumors of satanic rituals including painted pentagrams from the 1970s. Military usage, used as World War II air raid shelters with stories of secret, dark, and damp operations. Failed infrastructure, part of a 1920s rail project abandoned during the Great Depression. Urban exploration, a known spot for the Cave Clan, an Australian urban exploring group who have left graffiti. The tunnels are currently being converted into a tourist attraction. Monte Cristo. Monte Cristo Homestead, located in Junee, New South Wales, is widely considered Australia's most haunted house, steeped in dark folklore, tragic history, and numerous reported hauntings since its construction in 1885. Built by Christopher and Elizabeth Crawley, the Victorian manor is believed to be inhabited by 10 main spirits, with visitors reporting ghostly figures, cold spots, and disembodied voices. Some key legends include the Maid's Fall, A pregnant maid is said to have plunged to her death from the balcony, with some legends claiming she was pushed by a ghostly presence. The stable boy. A stable boy is believed to have burned to death with his spirit still haunting the property. The child on the stairs. The Crawleys' granddaughter was allegedly dropped down the stairs by a terrified nursemaid who blamed a spirit. Harold. A disabled man named Harold was reportedly kept chained in the caretaker's cottage for over 40 years, with his ghost allegedly still making noises with chains. Elizabeth Crawley, the original owner, known as a strict matron, is believed to still roam the house, often making her presence known to those who show disrespect. Historical context and present day. The Ryans. Reginald and Olive Ryan purchased the derelict vandalized mansion in 1963, restoring it and experiencing and documenting immense paranormal activity. Visitors often report feeling ill, severe headaches, being touched, or seeing apparitions. The house operates as a popular tourist spot. It features antique collections, ghost tours, a bed and breakfast, with the owners claiming they have never spent a night alone in the house. The Bunyip. A formidable amphibious monster in Australian Aboriginal mythology, deeply rooted in oral traditions for thousands of years, inhabiting swamps, billabongs, and rivers. The nocturnal creature is variously described as having fur, feathers, or scales with features like an elongated neck, horse-like head, and flippers. Descriptions differ across regions, but generally include a large menacing creature with a loud booming roar. Some accounts describe it as a long-necked seal-like creature, while others portray it as having a crocodilian or dog-like appearance. Often portrayed as a bloodthirsty predator that preys on humans, especially children and women. It's considered a dangerous spirit or devil. In some Aboriginal traditions, the Bunyip serves as a guardian of water sources, punishing those who take more than their share. The myth may be based on ancestral memories of extinct megafauna, such as the Diprotodon. It's also suggested to be based on sightings of rare fugitive seals far upstream, or the loud cry of the bittern marsh bird. Early settlers in the 19th century adopted the legend, often viewing it as a mysterious, unidentified animal. Reports and alleged Bunyip skulls were featured in the 19th century newspapers and museums. Crown Casino Morgue. A persistent Melbourne urban legend claiming the South Bank complex hides a basement morgue and secret tunnels to discreetly remove bodies of gamblers who committed unaliving. I don't think I can say the real word on here, sorry. Stories include rotating bathroom stalls for body disposal to avoid disrupting gambling. The rumor is false, with no such evidence, or so they say. Due to the claim. Due to high rates of unaliving or sudden death among patrons, the casino allegedly operates a secret in-house morgue to handle corpses. Mythmakers cite special unmarked service elevators, hidden tunnels, and rotating toilet cubicles in big risk areas. The story reflects the dark side of gambling, suggested that broken dreams and empty bank accounts lead to a high mortality rate. While Crown does have extensive back-of-house corridors for staff to move around without entering the gaming floor, there is no, and never has been, a casino-operate morgue. The legend may have been fueled by the presence of the Victorian Coroner's Court, which is located in South Bank. Aum Shinrikyo nuclear test. A Japanese doomsday cult purchased the remote Banjawarn station in Western Australia in 1993, where they mined for uranium and conducted research on chemical and nuclear weapons. By the way, if I'm pronouncing any of this wrong, just ignore it. Just ignore it. And if I get a fact wrong, please let me know in the comments. I forgot to say that in the beginning. Anyway, following a mysterious 1993 seismic event, speculation arose that they had tested a nuclear device, though this remains an unproven, enduring piece of Australian conspiracy folklore. On May 28, 1993, a seismic event occurred near Banjawarn Station, registering roughly 2.0 on the Richter scale, which some interpreted as a 2,000-ton high explosive equivalent. The cult, led by Shoko Asahara, had purchased the station to develop weapons, driven by a belief in an impending nuclear apocalypse. Geologist Harry Mason investigated the event, noting a strange, intense fireball witnessed in the area. While it's fact that the cult owned land and sought nuclear capabilities, there is no definitive publicly acknowledged proof that they detonated a nuclear weapon. However, the incident is widely cited in Australian conspiracy theories. The cult was actively mining for uranium on the property. Wakehurst Parkway. A road connecting Sydney's northern beaches is considered one of Australia's most haunted locations. Folklore centers on Kelly, a ghostly hitchhiker in the backseat, a spectral nun or nurse, and a girl in white on Middle Creek Bridge, often linked to fatal accidents and the area's history as a dumping ground. Key aspects. Kelly the ghost, a young female spirit who reportedly appears in the backseat of cars, sometimes taking control of the steering wheel to cause accidents if not told to leave. The nun or nurse. Witnesses report a nun in a white habit or an old-style nurse uniform, sometimes appearing as a reflection in the rearview mirror. The road's reputation is fueled by its history as a place where murder victims were dumped, including the 1990s case of Stephen Dempsey. Middle Creek Bridge, a specific location where a woman in white is often seen, with drivers reportedly driving directly through her. Beyond figures, reports include flickering headlights, icy chills in the car, and feelings of not being alone. Tier 3. I told y'all this was a quicker one. Mahogany Ship. A legendary unidentified shipwreck reputedly buried in sand dunes between Warrnambool and Port Fairy in Victoria, Australia. First reported by whalers in 1836, it's described as an ancient dark-timbered vessel, possibly a 16th century Spanish or Portuguese caravel that predates recorded European exploration of Australia. In 1836, seal hunters found a large antique wooden wreck high in the dunes. It was described as having dark wood, leading to the name mahogany. The legend suggests that urban explorers reached Australia long before Captain Cook in 1770 or the Dutch in 1606. The ship is variously described as a 1522 Portuguese caravel, part of a secret expedition, a Spanish ship, or an early colonial era wreck, example, the 1813 Unity. The wreck was last reliably reported in the 1880s and has since been covered by shifting sand dunes, turning it into a ghost ship that is searched for but never found. The story is a major part of local folklore, inspiring books, festivals, and numerous ultimately unsuccessful searches. Flinders Street Station Swap. The popular Australian urban legend claims that the architectural plans for Melbourne's Flinders Street Station and Mumbai's Victoria Terminus, now Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj Terminus, were accidentally swapped by British architects in the late 19th century. This myth suggests Melbourne received a tropical-style design, while Mumbai received a European one. It's rumored that the blueprints were mixed up in London, leading to the wrong station being built in each city. There is no evidence for this claim. It's considered a myth. The current Flinders Street Station was designed by local Victorian architects James Fawcett and HPC Ashworth following an 1899 competition and completed in 1910. Mumbai's Victoria Terminus was completed much earlier in 1887, making an 1890s/1900s plan swap impossible. The design for Mumbai features flora and fauna motifs specific to the Indian subcontinent, indicating it was designed for its location. Similar legends exist about other structures, such as a 1960s mix-up where a police station intended for Melbourne was allegedly built in the country town of St. Arnaud. The iconic "I'll meet you under the clocks" refers to the row of historically handset departure indicator clocks on the main facade. Coogee Mary. Coogee Lady, or Our Lady of the Fence Post, refers to a 2003 phenomenon where thousands flocked to Coogee Beach, Sydney, Fence, believing an optical illusion caused by sun and shadows was an apparition of the Virgin Mary. Located near Dolphins Point, the site became a makeshift shrine. In January 2003, local resident Christine Cherry noticed the image on a white post and rail fence, which appeared between 3 p.m. and 4:30 p.m. It was seen by many as a sign of peace following the 2002 Bali bombings, which affected the local Coogee Dolphins Rugby League club. While considered an optical illusion by many, the site drew thousands of visitors, including the sick and devout, leading to the establishment of a lasting, though unofficial, shrine. The phenomenon is often cited as a modern example of faith, folklore, and for some, a spiritual event in a secular beach culture setting. The shrine was vandalized in early 2003, but quickly restored by locals. King Park Satanists. A persistent Perth, Western Australia urban legend alleging that occult groups or witches hold midnight rituals, sacrifices, and summon dark forces in the secluded bushlands of Kings Park. These tales often involve stories of hooded figures, strange noises, and red-robed cultists, frequently surfacing around the 1980s Satanic Panic era. The vast dark bushland areas of Perth's central Kings Park are the primary setting for this. For decades, rumors have circulated about a coven or cult operating in the bushlands of Kings Park, particularly near areas shrouded in darkness. These myths are often intertwined with real tragic and unexplained deaths, such as those of homeless individuals, which locals have erroneously attributed to cult activity rather than other causes. The stories are heavily rooted in the moral panics of the late 1980s and early 1990s, where fear of occult activity was prevalent. Kings Park is actually a profoundly significant site to the local Noongar people of the Whadjuk tribe, and it's being recognized as sacred ground, Kartakumba, where the mythical Waggle serpent created the Swan River. In a separate, similar but actual historical case from the 1950s, artist Rosalie Norton, known as the Witch of King's Cross, in Sydney was frequently targeted by the media for alleged satanic rituals, showing a pattern of witch hunting in Australian folklore. Princess Theatre Ghost. The ghost of the Princess Theatre in Melbourne is Frederick Federici, a baritone who suffered a fatal heart attack on March 3, 1888, while descending a trapdoor as Mephistopheles in Faust. As a beloved, benevolent spirit, he is said to attend opening nights with CB28 in the dress circle often reserved for him. During the 1888 opening night of Faust, Federici was being lowered into the basement through a stage trapdoor after his final performance when he passed away. Fellow performers and staff reported that Federici took his final bows with them despite having already passed away, making him one of Australia's most famous ghosts. He is considered a friendly ghost, often sighted in formal attire, and is thought to bring good luck to performances. Numerous actors, staff, and visitors have reported seeing a tall, distinguished-looking man or feeling his presence. Larundel Music Box. The Larundel Mental Asylum Music Box legend centers on a young girl in a nightdress haunting the abandoned Bundoora Victoria site. Paranormal reports include hearing the delicate phantom melody around 9 to 10 p.m. The ghost is often seen clutching the music box. Legend tells of a young girl who died at the institution. She is reportedly seen in a nightdress holding a musical carillon. Visitors to the abandoned closed-down hospital, closed in 1999, report hearing a haunting or delicate music box playing at night. The phenomenon is associated with the former Larundel Mental Hospital in Bundoora, Victoria. While some lore suggests the music box originated from a nearby university to scare trespassers, the ghost story is more widely told, featuring in local paranormal accounts. Put tier 3, but I think this is supposed to be tier 4. If I'm wrong, let me know. Poinciana Woman. A Darwin, Northern Territory urban legend dating from the 1950s about the ghost of a woman R-worded and hanged by men under a poinciana tree at East Point Reserve. Known as a vengeful spirit, she is said to stalk and kill men at night, often appearing as a beautiful woman before transforming into a monster. The myth is believed to have originated in the 1950s among Filipino and Malaysian workers in Darwin, potentially influenced by Southeast Asian tales of the Pontianak, a vengeful pregnant ghost. She is described as a long-haired woman in a white dress who appears to young men driving at night. In many versions, she transforms into a hideous, eagle-clawed hag before attacking her victims. She primarily haunts the East Point Reserve in Darwin, particularly around the trees where she is said to be heard wailing. Folklore suggests she can be summoned on moonless nights by spinning 3 times and calling her name. Hawkesbury River Monster, aka the Mullywonk, is a legendary Australian cryptid said to inhabit the deep, murky waters near Sydney, NSW. Described as a 25 to 35-foot gray-skinned, 4-flippered creature similar to a plesiosaur, it has been reportedly sighted since the 1800s with lore rooted in indigenous tales of giant water serpents. Often described as a plesiosaur or a massive long-necked eel with flippers. Reports of sightings date back to the early 20th century with numerous accounts in the 1980s describing the creature ramming boats or creating large disturbances. It's associated with Aboriginal stories of Marilla, a giant water serpent, or Mullywonk, which were believed to be depicted in local rock art. Sightings frequently occur between Wiseman's Ferry and Broken Bay. While some believe it's a surviving prehistoric creature, others suggest misidentified marine life such as large sharks, seals, or even decomposing whale carcasses. Button Man, a modern Australian folklore figure and suspected enigmatic bushman believed to haunt the remote Victorian Alpine National Park. I'm sorry, but calling something Button Man is horrifying. That sounds scary. Described as a reclusive older man, He is feared for allegedly stalking campers, leaving strange rock piles, and potentially being linked to multiple disappearances in the high country. He's often described as a 70-year-old with short gray hair and a dark jacket who moves surprisingly agility. I wrote agility, who moves surprising. I literally put who moves surprising agility. So take with that what you will. He is known to approach campsites without a light, sometimes acting territorial or spooky. He is called the Button Man because he reportedly carves and wears buttons made from deer antlers. Okay, cool. Locals and media have linked him to several cold cases, including the 2020 disappearance of campers Russell Hill and Carol Clay in the Wanangata Valley. He was previously nicknamed the Angry Deer Hunter by some hikers. Okay. The legend includes tales of him leaving small rock pyramids in the wilderness and having a 1,000-yard stare. Okay. No, like, I'm not scared. Okay. While some view him as a dangerous criminal, others suggest he is a harmless, albeit intense survivalist living off the grid. That's not very good either, but, whatever. Devil's Pool. Located in the Babinda Boulders in Queensland, Australia, it's steeped in an Aboriginal Dreamtime legend about a young woman named Ulana from the Yindinji tribe. Separated from her lover, she drowned herself in the pool, and oh my god, and her spirit is said to lure young men to their deaths. Ulana was married to a respected elder, but fell in love with Daiga, a handsome warrior from another tribe. They fled together, but were captured, leading Ulana to throw herself into the water in despair. It is believed that Ulana's spirit still haunts the water, searching for her lost love, and her anguished cries pull young men into the often fatal currents. The site is considered highly dangerous and has claimed at least 17 lives, mostly young male travelers, over the past 60 years. Situated near Babinda, 58 kilometers south of Cairns, it's a natural pool formed at the confluence of 3 streams known for treacherous swirling waters. Jack the Ripper in Australia. Interesting. Frederick Bailey Deeming, an English-born criminal who murdered his family in Rainhill, England, and later his second wife in Melbourne, Australia, is the primary link between Jack the Ripper and Australian folklore. Executed in 1892, Deeming's brutality and presence in both countries led to the speculation that he was the notorious Whitechapel Killer, which I guess now, Jack the Ripper has been identified, and I don't know if it could be him. I don't think it was. But wouldn't that be crazy? Anyway, I'll include a clip when, I'll just look it up right now, actually. He was identified as Aaron Kosminski, a Polish immigrant and barber. Using DNA. It was not him. Okay. It was not Frederick Bailey Deeming. But that would be cool. In 1892, either way, this guy was a killer, so whatever. In 1892, Deeming was arrested in Victoria, Australia for the murder of his wife, Emily Mather, whose body was found buried under the fireplace of their Windsor home. Deeming was suspected of being Jack the Ripper due to his movements, misogynistic violent behavior, and hints he allegedly dropped about knowing the London killer. Ooh, maybe he did know him, though, because he did move from London. You never know. The story of Deeming as a potential Ripper is a staple of Australian true crime, often explored in documentaries like Jack the Ripper, Australia's Killer, which investigated his potential connection via forensic analysis. The gruesome nature of his crimes in Melbourne and the subsequent sensationalist media coverage helped cement his legacy as a local monster linked to the international legend. Either way, he was a killer, so it doesn't really matter because they were both killers, so, Burning Airman, a reputed Australian urban legend and ghost story associated with a World War II bomber crash near Canberra. Witnesses often visiting the site have reported terrifying apparitions of a pilot on fire, along with phantom engine noises, mechanical failures, and sudden intense smells of smoke. The story stems from the 1945 crash of a B-24 Liberator bomber, which resulted in the deaths of 4 crew members. The sightings are concentrated around the crash site in vicinity of Canberra, with reports often mentioning the woods. Reports include a teenage girl claiming to be chased by the burning figure and visitors experiencing car issues, stalling in park, radios turning on. The area is considered one of Australia's most haunted, with about 25% of visitors to the memorial reporting strange, chilly, or mechanical issues. I believe this would be tier 5. It says tier 4, but I believe it's tier 5. I did it wrong, I think. Sorry. Schneider's Alley. Schneider's Alley is a piece of Australian urban folklore most associated with suburban Sydney, especially around the inner west. The story usually centers on a narrow laneway called Schneider's Alley, supposedly named after a European immigrant, often described as German, who lived or worked nearby in the late 19th or early 20th century. Schneider was either murdered in the alley, or he murdered someone there, or he died under mysterious circumstances. I guess we'll never know. Over time, locals began reporting strange occurrences, cold spots, shadowy figures, footsteps behind them, and the feeling of being watched. Some versions say a tall man in old-fashioned clothing appears at night and vanishes when approached. There's some folklore themes. Migrant-era backstories. Many stories connect to early European settlers. Laneway hauntings. Narrow alleys are a common setting in Australian ghost stories. Oral transmission. The details change depending on who tells it. Historical basis. There is little verified historical evidence of a documented Schneider's Alley haunting in official records. It appears to be more of a localized urban legend rather than a nationally recognized folklore figure like the Yowie or the Bunyip. Stories like this function as local bonding myths, teen dare locations, cautionary tales about walking alone at night, and a way of adding mystery to otherwise ordinary suburbs. Secret Tullamarine Station. A modern Australian urban legend centered on Tullamarine, the suburb best known as the location of Melbourne Airport. The story claims that beneath Tullamarine there exists a hidden or abandoned underground train station. According to different versions, it was supposedly built but never opened. It was meant to directly connect to the airport decades ago. It was constructed for military, government, or emergency purposes, or it was sealed off after an accident or unexplained event. Some versions describe unused tunnels, bricked up entrances, or secret platforms accessible only through restricted areas. The legend likely grew from real-life circumstances. For decades, Melbourne did not have a rail link to its airport, which made people speculate about abandoned plans. Large infrastructure projects often leave behind unused shafts, tunnels, or service corridors. Airports naturally attract conspiracy theories because of security restrictions and limited public access. There is no verified evidence of a completed secret passenger station beneath Tullamarine. No one's ever seen it, I guess. That's just what they say. Latrobe Nuclear Bunker likely refers to a popular urban legend surrounding secret underground tunnels beneath Latrobe University's Bundoora campus in Melbourne. While the university has confirmed the existence of tunnels, they are generally service tunnels, ruling myths of hidden, restricted, or Cold War-era bunkers. It's a common myth among students that an extensive top-secret or nuclear-hardened bunker network exists beneath the university, often rumored to be for government officials or deep-cover research. While the university has acknowledged the existence of tunnels, they are utility or service tunnels and are off-limits to students. It's important not to confuse this urban legend with genuine, historically documented World War II-era bunkers, such as the Coastal Intelligence Bunker in Malakuta. The term might sometimes be confused with historical non-nuclear defense infrastructure, such as the Radar Station 203, which served as a World War II-era air raid shelter and monitoring site. Lismore Glowing Cross, an Australian northern New South Wales folklore phenomenon originating in 1918. A Balmoral granite headstone for a railway worker, William Steenson, in North Lismore Pioneer Cemetery appeared to emit a bright white light. Often called the Ghost on the Hill, it drew massive crowds in 1978 before vanishing or being broken in 1986. The headstone belonged to William Steenson, who died in 1907 while attempting to stop a runaway train. The cross was observed emitting a bright white light, sometimes bright enough to illuminate surrounding graves, particularly visible from the Wilson Street Bridge over Leicester Creek. It was locally known as the Ghost on the Hill. Theories on the causes range from phosphorescence in the granite, light refraction from the city, or supernatural causes. While known locally for decades, the phenomenon became a sensation in 1978 after a letter to the Northern Star. The cross was vandalized and eventually vanished around 1986. Altona Homestead Catman. Edward John Goodson, known as the Catman, is a prominent ghostly figure associated with the historic 19th century Altona homestead in Melbourne's west. He was reportedly murdered there in 1909, making the homestead a key location for local folklore and haunted tours. Edwin John Goodson was a resident or caretaker at the homestead. He was reportedly murdered on the property in 1909. His story is part of the extensive ghost lore surrounding the homestead, which is considered one of Melbourne's most haunted sites, often included in nightly ghost tours. Located just 20 minutes from Melbourne, the homestead is a historic bluestone building dating back to 1842. Built by Alfred and Sarah Langhorne, it was the first homestead on the Port Phillip Bay foreshore. In addition to the Catman, many claim to see the ghostly apparition of Sarah Langhorne peering from the windows. It now serves as a house museum managed by the Altona Laverton Historical Society. It's important to distinguish this historical legend from the modern strange Catman, Kentaro Jin, a Japanese traveler who became famous in 2025 to 2026 for walking 5,000 plus kilometers across Australia while wearing a leopard print suit and pushing a wheelbarrow, which is called a cat in Japanese. Sydney Foundational Big Bang. A massive violent thunderstorm that occurred on the night of February 6, 1788, during the official landing of female convicts. There's a legend about this, and I kid you not, it's called the Foundational Orgy. This meteorological event is the factual core behind a widely known urban legend often called the Foundational Orgy. The popular myth suggests that the founding of Sydney was marked by a night of drunken debauchery and mass sexual encounters between convicts and sailors once the women were finally brought ashore. There is some reality to this. Contemporary journals from the First Fleet describe a night of extreme weather. Lightning strikes killed livestock and split trees, while heavy rain turned the settlement into a bog. While some merrymaking and swearing occurred among sailors and convicts, historians at the Dictionary of Sydney argue the mass orgy narrative is a later embellishment. In recent years, the term Big Bang has also been used in creative and scientific contexts within Sydney. At the Sydney Festival in 2025, artistic performances like Anito used a Big Bang motif to symbolize the creation of life and the erupting nature of Sydney's complex colonial and Indigenous history. Indigenous creations, some modern educational resources for the Eora people, traditional owners of Sydney, bridge ancient Dreamtime stories with scientific concepts, noting that while the universe began with a Big Bang 14 billion years ago, the land was shaped by the rainbow serpent, also called Galeru. I believe this is tier 6? Euroa Beast. A legendary Australian cryptid first reported in the late 9th century near the town of Euroa, Victoria. Often categorized alongside other aquatic monsters like the bunyip, it gained significant notoriety through sensationalist newspaper reports in 1890. Witness accounts from the 1890s varied, but the most consistent descriptions portrayed it as a massive amphibious creature approximately 30 feet long, frequently described as having a bulldog-faced appearance with prominent jaws, often likened to a giant serpent or a large prehistoric reptile with a tail as thick as a tree trunk. Witnesses reported it being dark brown on top and yellow underneath. The beast was said to inhabit a swamp at Willonimby, about 14 miles from Euroa. Local tales claimed the area had been abnormal since at least 1884, with stories of dogs fleeing the swamp and never returning. The legend peaked when a group of reed cutters and a subsequent hunting party claimed to have encountered the creature in February 1890. These accounts were widely published in major papers like the Melbourne Argus and the Brisbane Courier. Many historians and skeptics believe the Euroa beast was a newspaper hoax designed to drive circulation during a slow news cycle, a common practice in 19th century Australian journalism. Because of its amphibious nature and aggressive reputation, it's often seen as a localized variant of the Aboriginal bunyip legend. Some modern enthusiasts speculate these sightings may have been of a relict population of extinct megafauna, such as a Lort monitor lizard or a semi-aquatic amphibian like Pedipes finniae. Catgaroo. A creature mentioned in pieces of Australian folklore, particularly in stories shared in rural and bush communities. It's generally described as a strange hybrid animal that combines traits of a large wild cat and a kangaroo. Similar to a kangaroo, it has powerful hind legs and is capable of long jumps. Its head and face is cat-like, often described with sharp teeth and glowing eyes. It is said to hop like a kangaroo but stalk like a predator, and it is found in remote Australian bushland or outback areas. It's nocturnal, stealthy, and elusive, occasionally described as dangerous to livestock or travelers. Often interpreted as part of a larger tradition of mysterious Australian cryptids, like other regional legends, it likely developed from misidentified wildlife, storytelling traditions among settlers and rural communities, and exaggerated accounts of wild animals. Unlike widely documented mythic beings from indigenous traditions, the catgaroo is more of a modern bush legend or cryptic tale rather than deeply rooted spiritual figure. The Botany Bay Giant, a figure that appears in Australian colonial era folklore tied to the region around Botany Bay near modern-day Sydney. Stories about the giant circulated in the late 18th and 19th centuries when the area was still associated with Britain's early penal colony. It is described as a massive human-like figure far larger than normal people, living in the wild bushland surrounding the bay. Reclusive and rarely seen, usually glimpsed from a distance, sometimes portrayed as threatening, other times simply mysterious. Witnesses often report seeing a towering silhouette moving through the trees or enormous footprints in the sand or mud. Botany Bay became famous in 1788 when the James Cook and later the First Fleet were connected with Britain's attempt to establish a penal colony in Australia. Because the early colony was remote and poorly understood, settlers and sailors often created exaggerated or supernatural tales about the landscape and what might live there. Stevens Megalodon, a famous 1918 sighting of a ghostly white giant shark that serves as a cornerstone of modern megalodon survival myths. Legend centers on a report recorded by Australian ichthyologist David George Stead in his book Sharks and Rays of Australian Seas. Seasoned crayfish fishermen at Port Stephens refused to go to the sea for days near Broughton Island after encountering a shark of unbelievable proportions. The fishermen claimed the creature was surfacing to swallow their 3-foot-wide crayfish pots whole, including the mooring lines and the fish and all. Witnesses were unanimous that the shark was ghostly white color and possessed a head as large as the roof of the Nelson Bay wharf shed. While panicking, some fishermen claimed it was 300 feet long, though more solid witnesses estimated it at 115 feet, still far exceeding any known great white. The story has transitioned from a local maritime report into a global piece of cryptozoological folklore, often cited as evidence that prehistoric giants still lurk in the deep. Some historians suggest the story was a tall tale invented by the fishermen to explain the loss of expensive equipment destroyed during a documented heavy storm that week. Scientists frequently argue the monster was likely a massive whale shark, which can reach 60-plus feet and may have appeared white if it had a pale underside or skin condition. The legend persists largely because Stead, a respected biologist, believed the men were too experienced and genuinely terrified to be lying, famously stating it must have been something really gigantic. There are some modern viral myths. There's some fake photography. Vintage black and white photos often circulate on social media, claiming to show the Port Stephens catch, but these are typically AI-generated or stage props from early 20th century sideshows. The Super Predator, a 2003 incident where a tagged great white was eaten by a larger predator in Australian waters, is often wrongly linked to the Port Stephens megalodon legend by internet theorists. Elephant Graveyard. In Australian folklore, it's not a traditional legend. Instead, the term appears in Australian culture through literary metaphor, geology, and sports. Literary and mythical context. Midnight, the story of a wild colonial boy. In this famous 1967 Australian children's novel by Randolph Stowe, the protagonist, Midnight, discovers a salt lake. A German explorer tells him it is a place where poets and explorers come to die, directly parroting the African elephant graveyard myth. Colonial monsters. During the 19th century, large fossilized bones of megafauna like the Diprotodon, a giant wombat-like creature, sometimes mistaken by early settlers for elephant or hippo remains, fueling tall tales of giant beasts in the outback. Cultural and sporting slang. The elephant graveyard in rugby. In Australian sports culture, particularly rugby union, the Brigadier General Estancilio Lopez Stadium in Argentina is nicknamed the Elephant Graveyard because it's a notoriously difficult venue where the Wallabies, Australia's national team, and other giants of the sport have suffered humiliating defeats. Political slang, similar to British and Spanish usage, Australians sometimes use this term to describe the Senate or certain government backwater postings where senior figures are sent to finish their careers without further promotion. Scientific and geological terms, geological formations. In Australian geology, elephant's graveyard is an informal term used by some researchers to describe a hypothetical accumulation of large rock blocks that have fallen from the roofs of underground magma chambers, otherwise known as batholiths. The general legend that aging elephants instinctively travel to a secret communal site to die is widely recognized in Australia through global pop culture like The Lion King or Tarzan, though it has been scientifically debunked. One Tree Hotel, a symbol of the isolation and harshness of the outback, famously immortalized in the works of Henry Lawson and A.B. Banjo Patterson. Located on the vast flat One Tree Plain between High and Booligal, New South Wales, it's often associated with the phrase hay, hell, and booligal. The hotel was named after a solitary giant gum tree that stood as the only landmark on an otherwise featureless 50-mile treeless plain. The legendary tree was destroyed in a storm on New Year's Eve, 1897, some records say 1900, leaving the hotel as the only remaining sentinel on the horizon. Some folk legends include beer off the ice. A classic piece of Australian bush humor involves a traveler complaining that their beer was hot, despite a sign promising it was off the ice. The publican supposedly replied, "Too right it is, 50 bloody miles of it," referring to the distance to the nearest ice supply. Literary fame. Because it was a vital Cobb & Co. staging post and watering hole, it became a frequent setting for stories about the loneliness of the bush and the grueling nature of colonial travel. After the original 1862 building burned down in 1903, the insurance company was legally forced to rebuild an identical replication using the original split cypress pine log methods, making the current standing structure a time capsule of 19th century architecture. The hotel ceased operating as a licensed pub in 1942. Today, it's a private residence and historic site that occasionally hosts country music festivals and bush poets, keeping its folkloric connection to Australian literature alive. Thank you guys for watching this. I'm hoping to have my next video out not too shortly. We'll see how it is, because actually my grandma did just die. Her funeral is like 3 days, 2 days, something like that. So yeah, it's been a tough time for my family, but it is okay. And I'm still churning out videos. I'm doing what I love. Hey. And work. But the next one I'm hoping to be about Disney legends. I'm working on it right now. It's very interesting. So I'm hoping to have that out not too shortly. But thank you guys for watching. Love you guys. Be safe. Hug your grandma if she's still here. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.